Breaking into the market. Should the UK government subsidise electric cars? On the 18th of November 2020, the UK government announced a groundbreaking new policy, which has been subject to doubt and scepticism regarding its achievability ever since. By 2030, there will be no more sales of ICEVs in the UK. 800,000 UK workers are involved in the car industry, and 10% of the UK's goods exports are at stake on top of this if the ban arrives before we make the switch to electrification. Since then, the target has been rolled back 5 years to 2035, but almost halfway along the way to the initial promise, how close are we to reaching our destination? Driven by increased environmental awareness and famously cheap Chinese production, the global number of EVs on the road has boomed. From 10 million in the year the countdown was started, 2020, up to 45 million in 2023. Nevertheless, as of early 2024, this growth seems to have stalled, with market giants Tesla and BYD experiencing falling sales. The environmental benefits of EVs are crystal clear. Despite concerns over emissions during battery production, it is estimated that by 2030, models will boast emissions of only 32 grams of CO2 per kilogram. That's nearly 8 times less than their contemporary petrol counterparts. Unfortunately, these advantages are not taken into account by the market price. On average, UK electric car prices only start at around £30,000. But if you take the money that you save on the effects of global warming into consideration, that's a negative externality of ICEVs, they start to look a lot more favourable. We call this overlook a market failure, and it could be argued that it's the government's responsibility to fix things through a subsidy. This would involve the government paying money to firms that invest in the production of EVs. When producers pass on these reduced costs of production to consumers as lower prices to compete with rival firms, the total demand in the economy for electric vehicles will go up, potentially by quite a lot, because the average person buying a car cares quite a bit about the price. This will result in the creation of clean, green jobs into the future, giving the UK economy a leg up on the road to recovery by boosting GDP. This is economically sustainable growth because it uses scarce resources wisely, and because EVs are the future. However, there are some opportunity costs of subsidies. For a start, EVs are only as eco-friendly as the national grid, and when you realise 60% of UK electricity still comes from non-renewables, we have to start asking some questions. If spending on the subsidy for EVs means the government forfeits spending on greener energy sources in order to maintain a balanced budget, this is a significant opportunity cost. Moreover, another counter-argument stems from the grey area of economies of scale. Usually in business, producing more output means unit costs fall, but EV batteries are made out of lithium, a metal that's mined and quite difficult to get hold of. Since we can't obtain more simply by clicking our fingers, we say the long-term supply of these materials is fairly inelastic. Indeed, the demand for lithium has surged by 1,000% since 2020. In time, we need to find new batteries besides lithium ones, and alternatives are being developed, they just need more funding. Could public sector spending efforts perhaps be more valued in R&D here, to produce cheaper EVs in the future that don't require subsidisation? Another key area to consider is charging infrastructure. If you own an EV, you're bound to have experienced the enervating frustration of arriving at the 10th service station to find full capacity and long queues yet again. Currently, private companies are responsible for public charging points, and they're simply not increasing enough in numbers. It seems sensible that the government take the reins here to make owning an EV more convenient. After all, if they're currently aimed at high-income earners, convenience is a key selling point for the transition. One survey quantified this, saying that ubiquitous chargers would be 6 times more effective than a subsidy. It's easy to assume that the race is already over. China has had the head start of producing cheap EVs since 2009, but accepting that and continuing like we are is like deciding not to start the race at all. In order to reach the net zero targets and still retain jobs after the ban on petrol and diesel cars, we undeniably need acceleration in the rollout of electric vehicles. However, a subsidy won't work alone. Better batteries, robust charging infrastructure, these are absolute musts, as the second one especially is the number one barrier to the purchase of an electric car, even above the £10,000 price premium. Because cars aren't an everyday purchase, so customers may well be willing to pay a third more if they believe it is the future, and that it is both convenient and cost-effective for them to take the leap. A government grant may be effective enough with regard to price reduction, without the need for a subsidy. To end with a quote from Julia Poliskanova from Transport and Environment, if we're serious about a diverse and resilient battery supply chain in Europe, we need to put our money where our mouth is right now. We're not going to get a second chance.